When's the last time you've seen a child who's really negative throughout the day? It's not very common to see a child that's just completely annoyed the entire day. And it's interesting because I look at that and I say, positive mindset. As you get older, I find that it's difficult to be more positive throughout the day, to have a positive mindset, to have positive thoughts. The older you get, it seems to be more difficult. And to be a nice person is just much more difficult. You see, children, they have so much joy. So for them to be frustrated or angry or display negative emotions for longer than a day, it's not very common. Now, if that individual is having a very difficult life, then I can see them having some negative emotions. But that joy, I think, gets sucked out of our lives as we get older, and we look to different mechanisms to basically gain a positive emotion or a positive feeling. So we look to seek out these experiences that for the most part are not even that good for you. Whether it's gambling or alcohol, you see those elicit this positive emotion in the moment, and yet they have dire consequences long term. And those people tend to be really suffering because they don't have that positive thinking. The mindset is shot. They're just going for the dopamine hit, and once they get it, they're looking for the next one. So what might have been positive, such as gambling in the moment, has now become this problem. It's now a negative thing for their lives. But they still perhaps get some sort of short-term joy. So they continue going and doing these things that aren't good for them. It's going to be very important to cultivate a positive mindset. If people want to be successful, they want to improve in their lives, they want to overcome addictions, I think the foundational piece is a positive mindset. To say that you can do whatever you want, you can achieve whatever you want. And I think if you can try to develop and cultivate that back into your life in a healthy way, that might make a difference. I think the problem with people trying to improve is that they're so out of it. They're completely in rock bottom, and they're trying to just all of a sudden be the master of their domain, but they don't have enough positive emotion, a positive energy, a positive feeling, a positive vibe, positive mindset to carry on day by day, to actually achieve what's necessary. People give up too easily, and I think being positive is critical. Before you even start to set goals, to set any sort of endeavor, because you'll likely fail. So why would I say this? Well, I have the experience here. I'm not one that, I come off as a nice individual, outward facing, but there's a lot of negative thoughts that go through my mind day by day. And I'm 34, so there's just so much garbage that is thrown my way, and I'm at a point now where, you know what, there's a lot of negative thoughts about this or that, or why did that person do this, or there's a lot of that, and as a result, some anger or sadness or whatever, and just disappointment, or And then if I make any mistakes, then, well, I'm pretty hard on myself, so then I just have the guilt, and so there's a lot of that, right? And I guess if I was gonna tell a story here, this goes way back. This goes probably high school is when I noticed the joy just kind of disappearing from my life. High school didn't really make sense for me. There was no identity, or at least that's what I thought. Now that I'm reflecting back, I would say that everyone in high school, or many people in high school, they don't have it figured out. So in terms of your psychosocial development, you're still trying to figure out your identity in high school. So if you don't fit in, that's because you probably shouldn't. You're trying to discover your identity. So I think a lot of people just naturally struggle with that, but it can be a very negative experience, right? And we're not really taught to be positive or build people up. We're not really, we sort of do this in a very supportive manner. Like we'll say, hey, good job on that, or you did a really amazing job, and give some nice feedback, which is really good. But there's not really much structure around cultivating a positive mindset from an internal standpoint. You see, what if you are isolated? You're in a desert, or you're in the middle of Iceland, and there's no one else around you. Who's going to be supportive and be nice and positive to you? Nobody. So why is it that a lot of these people in isolation are doing just fine? Well, they're able to look at things in a positive way. They seem to have some color to their lives because they've understood what it's like to endure through difficult times, perhaps, and they're comfortable with what many might consider suffering. They just look at it and they're like, well, this is just another Tuesday, right? So they seem to be able to approach it differently. Whereas you have people, millionaires, billionaires, celebrities, and they have everything that they could want, and they have all the support that they could ever need, and yet they're miserable. They can't figure it out. They're just negative, and they don't have good thoughts. So what's going on here? I guess therapy is maybe not such a good answer to things, because I think there's more to it. I think you really got to look at an inward approach. If you're looking externally for validation, then I think you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle in life. I just don't think it works. See, you really have to sit and think through your thoughts. I guess you have to figure out why you're so negative. You have to sit with that. And it's not something that people want to do. They prefer to skip that process. They don't want to think about negative thoughts. So I think it's important to reflect on that and say, why are you negative? Well, can you change this to a positive mindset? There was, going back to my high school days, I'm sort of jumping all over the place, but whatever. That's the power of YouTube. I would say in high school, you go through that identity, then university becomes even more challenging because life gets more serious. So actually the negativity can basically compound in your life. Grades become more important, life decisions become more important, choosing your right degree, so college/university becomes super critical and very difficult for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people struggle there. I certainly did. So by the end of it, once I got out of that, I was a shell of my former self. I was so much happier when I was a kid. And then to see what I became now that I'm reflecting on it is really disappointing. I'm like, you know what? Nobody else is responsible for this. This is my decision to be thinking this way. Nobody else is going to hold my hand. At the end of the day, I have to sit and decide whether I want to be a positive person or a negative person. So, once you hit your 30s, it becomes more difficult to change your outward behavior. So that's when reflection becomes even more important. I suppose I'm doing this now so that I can cultivate a positive mindset, right? Giving a bit of a journey, a bit of a story about what I've gone through, but and what many people tend to do, and then they realize, well, if I want to be successful, I need to redesign, rewire the brain. And how do you do that? Well, I really don't have a good answer because I'm not as positive as I could be. So I don't think I'm 100% qualified to talk about this. But I can give you some suggestions which might work to try out. You could do some meditation. You can sort of go for walks and just think and reflect, and you could get on an exercise program. You could clean out your diet. I really think that junk food creates junk thoughts. So if you're just pouring a bunch of junk into your body, that's probably not going to be the most positive result for you, just in terms of thinking. So if you could really just clean that up, fruits, vegetables, meat, that's sort of what I'm trying to do. I do find myself a little bit more, I find myself thinking a little bit more clearly and just a little bit brighter if I just have my diet taken care of for a couple days. I'll notice the difference. So I think that can really make a big difference. And just sitting and meditating on the thoughts, I suppose, would be helpful if you don't want to go for those walks. But sitting and thinking. I think another thing is just deficiencies in vitamin D, which can help brighten your mood, perhaps. So I might want to look at that. There's so many things, right? It really depends on what it is that you're going through, I suppose. But if you were to take a step back and ask yourself, is what you're going through worse than someone in Africa, in a country that's full of poverty, where you have children on the streets and they're still smiling? Do you really think that whatever you're going through is worse? So I guess the question is, why can't you be positive given that you have so much abundance? The fact that you're able to watch this or listen to it means that you have more than most of the people in the world. So the question is, why do you need anything? That's where, even though I throw out diet, exercise, meditation, all this stuff, you know what? A lot of people don't have diet, exercise, and meditation. That's not part of their vocabulary. They'd be lucky to get an apple every couple days, some of them, and yet they're happy. So you could pretty much throw all that out the door, right? That's like saying, well, the only way you can be successful is if you're fit and you've got a six-pack. Well, that's not true, because there's so many people who are clearly obese and they're doing just fine in the world. So to say that you should be jacked or you should be fit, that has nothing to do with it. Sorry to downplay all of that, but you have all these fitness people who are insisting that to be successful you have to be ripped. Well, it can help, but there are people who are starving and they're doing okay, and then there's people that are full of food and they're doing okay. It's just such a range, right? So I think it really comes down to looking at the world in a positive way and maybe noting, hey, there's a negative thought, and then trying to get rid of that. That's all I can really say. Beyond that, I don't know. If you have everything that you possibly could need, you're living the good life and you're still sad, then this is where you really have to look at some inward thinking here, because you're maybe not appreciating what you have, you're maybe not grateful. There's just a number of things, right? And we don't really take the time to maybe think about that. You see somebody in Africa who's struggling, well, maybe they have a lot of time to reflect and think about the good things that they have. Whereas here in the busy world, in North America, where everything is just hustle and bustle, we don't have time to think about what we should be grateful for. We're thinking about that next thing that we have to do. So I guess this whole positive mindset video is just about taking that personal responsibility and saying, what comes out of my mouth or what I'm thinking about, what I choose to dwell on, those are my decisions and no one else's. No food would make a difference. No exercise would make a difference. It's really just ground zero starts with me. No matter how big I am or small, I choose what I'm thinking. And once you do that, well, I mean, then sure, exercise, diet, I mean, that could elevate things. But if you could just be happy where you're at, then maybe you can push forward and become successful. Maybe. Don't take it from me, though. So I'm just a guy with a camera and a microphone. I don't have any answers. And anyone who does claim that they have all the answers, probably want to take that with a grain of salt, because they might be more miserable than you. So that's the other thing you have to look at, is these fake worlds that we've surrounded ourselves with, these fake worlds called social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. These are fake worlds. They're showing our best selves. They're showing something that doesn't even exist in a common way. So what happens is we feel terrible because our lives aren't like that, and that's just not fair. And to put that kind of mindset in your head, it's like, no, that's cool that somebody's sharing their trip to Indonesia or whatever, but that's not me. And I'm proud of where I'm at, and cool, I've never been to Indonesia before, but there's no reason for me to feel jealous or angry that somebody else is going there and I haven't. Or maybe I've got 10 kids at home and I got to deal with that for the rest of my life. Well, like, how you look at it is really up to you. I guess some people look for that outward help, and maybe there's nothing wrong with that, but if you're sitting across from a therapist 10 years later and you're wondering why you're still in the same spot you were 10 years ago, well, maybe You have to take your thoughts a little bit more seriously and stop relying on somebody else to solve the problem. These crutches, these things, like nobody's gonna hold your hand at the end of the day. Man, woman, doesn't matter. And it's all superficial. It's like your therapist isn't your friend. You're paying them $200 an hour to sit there and listen. I mean, the first thing they should do is tell you, like, why are you wasting your money? Like, get out of here. Like, you don't need to do this. It's totally pointless. You have all the answers. They're all in your head. And whatever they say to you, you decide whether you want to follow through or you want to ignore them, right? And I don't want to knock all of that world, but when you see people really struggling, then you sort of look and say, I guess I really don't need anything right now. I don't need to go to this talk session. I don't need to go to this group session of that. It's all pointless. You strip it all down, and if you had none of it, and you were kicked out of the house by your parents, you'd figure out the answers. You wouldn't need to be talking to anyone. You're wasting your time. Because all you're doing is you're wallowing in this self-pity. Now, every time you go to these sessions, it's basically telling you that you're not enough. Every time you go, before you even go there, it's like you've got a problem. But you don't have any problems. That's the thing that you have to realize. You can develop positive thoughts. You can say, I'm going to have an amazing day today, and this is all going to work out well. And the things that might be problematic, it's okay. It'll just wash right off. You can decide that in an instant. You can put that thought pattern in your head. A therapist isn't going to do that. They're going to tell you to talk about all your problems, all your past traumas, but those have already happened. You can't do anything about that. So all you can do is think about what's going on right now. I guess that whole Eckhart Tolle guy, I mean, he's made a whole career and then some off of just living in the now, right? And I suppose there's a lot to that. I have nothing against that guy. It's just really interesting to make a career based off of basically nothing. You just have to sit and think about nothing. And but good on him. He's obviously changing a lot of people's lives, because that really is what it is at the end of the day. Is, can you just like sit there and just be happy with where you're at? I mean, that's at the end of the day. Anyway, that's my talk on positive and negative mindsets, and don't know what else to say, but best of luck. Hopefully you'll be happier tomorrow. Okay, bye.